Welcome to this video. This is coverage of the second Sinquefield Cup, named after Rex Sinquefield, the mastermind behind the St. Louis Chess Club and Scholastic Center. He's started this tournament last year, and it was a very strong tournament last year, but this year, in terms of rating, is the strongest tournament ever. Always difficult with those kind of best ever and so on, especially when it comes to rating averages, where it is not totally clear how this increase of rating points over the years is to be how this is to be calculated. Is this a real increase of strength, or is there some mathematical thing behind it that ratings get higher and higher? Nevertheless, this is a super strong tournament. We have basically only super top players. We have Carlsen playing Aronian, Caruana, Nakamura, Topalov, and Michel Graf. Not a frequent name in the super top events, but the top French player has reached a very high rating, 2,768, and is also known for his enterprising style. So great tournament edition. Let's see what happened in the first round. I'm doing a daily coverage of all the rounds. Mostly, it will be usually a couple of hours after the round is finished, simply because the round normally finishes after midnight European time. And in the past I tried to do videos at that time, but it was always a bit difficult. I was usually very tired and had a hard time to make a good analysis and proper video. So I rather do it the following day in my time. I will cover all games, 2 games per round, with light annotations only, and 1 game a little bit more in detail. Let's start with the first round. We have Aronian playing white against Nakamura, and of all 3 games, this was the comparatively less interesting game, or least interesting game. Let's see what happened. Nakamura playing black, and he went for the Slav defense. He plays all kinds of openings, also the Slav. Still a somewhat rare choice for him. It is, of course, a super solid opening, and we got to the so-called classical Slav, the traditional main line of this opening. Black is temporarily giving up the center on c4, and in return has got a super solid structure. This is the line with e3, sometimes called, I think, the Dutch variation. This is, I think, originated in the World Championship match in the 1930s. Is it in the 30s? Between Oewe and Alekhine, when this was played frequently. Okay, we have all those moves. They are very, very standard. Here white has some possibilities. Knight h4, queen b3, ton of moves. Queen e2 is the main line. Black castles, and white goes for e4. So we have an interesting situation. Out of a relatively classical opening, d4, d5, we have reached a position where black has giving up the center temporarily. White has got the ideal pawns here, but black has pressure against the center, combining a capture on c3 with the knight and the bishop attacking e4. White has a hard time to maintain his pawns in this ideal state. He will probably have to advance them, especially the e4, e5, I mean. And this is happening really quickly here with e5. It's hard for white to avoid that. Also considering that black here has the additional idea to play e6, e5, which can easily happen if white now plays a 0 move. He can play bishop f4, that's also possible, but in this case Aronian played e5, knight d5, takes, and queen e3. Queen e3 is a slightly ugly looking move, but it's absolutely essential to get out of this pin to make any headway here. White has the space advantage on the king side with those pawns. It's very often the case that your play is pointed towards the direction of the pawn chain, so White's pawn chain is directed here, so he will do something on the king side because there's his space advantage. Black mostly relies on his very solid structure. He's no pawn weakness whatsoever, and no squares are particularly weak. It's also important for him to have the b4 square. White has weakened his queen side. Okay, rook e8. This is a useful move. It makes sure that if necessary a knight can come to f8. Bishop d2 wants to exchange this slightly annoying bishop. White's dark squared bishop is not great anyway. And queen a5. Yeah, here there's a slight wrinkle in this game. Move order thing. Or move order is maybe the wrong expression. A slight subtlety. White plays queen e1 here. Normally they go like this. And then queen to e7. This, for example, is the main line in the recently released book by top Israeli grandmaster and theoretician Boris Avrukh. He assesses this at the end as about equal. Black very often gets play on the c file and can exchange with bishop g6, can exchange his bishop on h5. In the game we have a very similar position. Queen e1. Takes, queen d8. It's the same thing, but the queen is on d8 instead of e7. This recently has been played. Knight g5. Normal way to go. Attacking on h7, and black gets his bishop to exchange. Here, in a recent game, Kasimdzhanov Nibak is the top Finnish player. 2600 strength grandmaster. Here Kasimdzhanov played bishop to e2. Keeping more pieces on the board. At the end, it did not lead to very much. It was a draw after 48 moves. Black played the typical idea knight b8 here to ultimately maybe go to one of the weak dark squares. The way Aronian played is a bit more typical. He took on g6. Here we come to an important moment, a moment that or a move that's a very routine move for an experienced player or player who has some experience in this kind of structure. Nakamura here took with the f-pawn. That's, as mentioned, totally normal in this position, but a less experienced player might take with the h-pawn. And this is in fact much weaker. The problem is that in this situation it is very difficult also to get rid of the g-pawn, the g-knight, g5 knight, as f6 weakens everything. Yeah, like e6, g6 and so on. It's a very bad structure, and you have a hard time to accept this knight on g5 all the time. That is not great here. This knight for black, very annoying piece. So f takes is much better in this respect, because here you can easily get it out with h6. Another problem with this situation is, if you imagine one thing, rook a3, this is the next move. Here white also, besides the idea to double on the c file, he might also play something like this: rook h3, queen f4, h4, and checkmate. Yeah, can easily happen. And this kind of idea would probably force black to play the weakening f6. Not sure if the c-file play of rook h3 is better, but definitely h takes g6 is a strategical mistake. So f takes, fairly normal move. And f4. Yeah, bolstering the center and allowing the knight to retreat to f3 within the pawn chain. Yeah, black now initiates play on the queen side with queen b6. Queen a6 here, always keeping an eye on the a5 pawn. I think basically in this game the state of around equal play was never really changed. I think maybe at one point Aronian could have played a bit more ambitiously. We will see that this has happened, and black has this counterplay on the queen side. Of course, black is not better because he always has this purely defensive knight on f8, which he probably must keep there to keep his weaknesses covered. rook c3, and there was one situation here where Aronian played rook c8. Here maybe queen c3 was still possible to try to fight for a little bit of an edge with this idea, where maybe we get to a position where the c and b pawn are exchanged. Let's say something like this: rook b1, rook c1, just to get this structure. This is something where white can try to play on because of his space advantage, and black has this slight weakness on e6. It will in all likelihood end in a draw anyway, but this is something that if you give Carlsen white here, it will be a very long day in the office. Not much fun to play, but certainly with good drawing chances for black. I mean, white is only a bit better. But after rook c8, we are now talking about almost a tactically forced draw. Rook takes, queen c1, queen a2, and now black has this big counterplay on the second rank against g2. White cannot take here after this.
Check.
He's going to get checkmated. Not a good idea. This is better, protecting on g2. Yeah, here's a nice little trap, but easy to see. If black now moves the knight, white has the funny way to checkmate black with knight g5. It's quite nice. The queen on h1 is not only a defensive piece, but Nakamura of course saw that and played queen to a3. Yeah, now white went back to c1. Quite funny, setting up this sort of pin here and covering c8. Everything's okay. Queen a2, queen h1, and this was the perpetual, in a way, or the repetition that in the end happened in this game to finish it with a draw. So looks like a very solid, correct draw. Nakamura also, I think, if I read this right, stated that he was, his plan was to play a very solid game, because he starts with two blacks against Aronian and Carlsen, and he wanted to have something in the books after round one, not risking too much, and then face maybe Carlsen with black in the second round after something bad happened in round one. So I guess a very prudent approach. Okay, let's look at the next game. Yeah, the second game is Topalov Caruana. Yeah, and this is a game of two players who look back at very good results. Recently, Caruana, for a brief moment, had the #2 spot in the world by rating. This is all very close. He's got 2,801. Well, Aronian has 2,805 or something. And Topalov had a very good Olympiad in Tromsø, Norway. He had the top result on the first board for Bulgaria. So he should be in good shape, it seems. Let's see what happens in this game. Topalov plays knight f3, c4. We have a English opening, and we have this line where black is playing d5, taking over, let's say, the initiative in the center. We have this. We now have this variation, and to be honest, I'm for a long time, for really a long time, I'm mystified why white players choose this. I mean, I have studied the English quite a lot because I play knight f3 for a very long time, but I always I never understand why white would play this line. It's basically a reversed Maroczy bind, where white has an extra tempo. Well, great, but it's not a very great structure in any case. I always thought that white is basically conceding equality right from the start. But okay, maybe my view there is a bit one-sided, as I always like to play the Maroczy structures from the side who has the bind. Never really like to play against it. Nevertheless, we have some very well-known moves. This has been played a ton of times. Of course, compared to the Maroczy, here black has this structure but has less active pieces. in the Maroczy bind, very often black is a bit more active. Like bishop's not on d7, but maybe on e6, the queen on d7. No? It's all a bit quicker, yeah? Let's say in your build-up. But nevertheless, it's a structure where white has one very distinct problem. He has very little in terms of pawn breaks. How is white going to break in this structure? He's got by definition here less space on the 3 ranks against 4. And what Topalov is trying is he's playing for f4 here with this maneuver. Alternatively, it seems that white can also play for b4, and this at least in my mind is a bit more interesting if you want. b6, b4, this has been tried before. I found 2 games here in my database with this. I mean, probably there are more than 2, but 2 recent games. This is interesting. The idea is that if black now goes pawn grabbing, white is opening up the position with d4, and this is in fact quite an active position for white with some compensation. This is a case where white's good development can really help him. He now manages to open up the position. I like this idea for white. Black does not need to take. He can also play something like that, after which white played rook c4 in a recent game, a game between Nicepianu and a player called Norge, I think probably, in Pardubice 2014, a recent game, only played about 1 or 2 months ago. White ended up winning this after some complication. Interesting way to play. The way Topalov is playing it is also known, the knight to c4 and f4. A similar plan is also seen in the Maroczy with f5. In the Maroczy bind, this plan is normally not very good, as it weakens the structure quite a lot. Here it is debatable, because white has really much more piece activity than in this colors reversed positions. Black has some slightly unlucky pieces here. Knight on c2 in this pin. It's all a bit... black is not perfectly coordinated, but if black manages to coordinate, then his structure will be simply good, because those pawns tend to be a liability in the long run. When if black manages a build-up on the d and e file, which is obviously quite a long way to happen, then those pawns can be a problem. The knight on d4, of course, is a strong piece. Very often it can be kicked away with the e3, but this further weakens white's structure. So this is all about a balance of piece activity and structure. I think, however, that relatively quickly here, Topalov is playing a bit strangely. He now went to play g4, which for my chess taste is a very weird move, but okay, he's obviously the stronger player. G4 is, I guess, designed to gain some space here and probably allow this idea. It would be nice if you get this actually in, but it turns out that this is not happening. I mean, black is playing very precisely bishop e8, bishop e1, b5, kicking the knight away, and bishop d6, and that's it for bishop g3. And now really ask yourself, what is the pawn doing on g4 besides weakening the king position? And I really absolutely dislike white's position. It feels very uncoordinated to me. The computer, if you give this to the engine, it only gives black a very minuscule advantage. However, I think in a practical game, this is very difficult to play already. You don't really know exactly what white should do. He's got lots of structural weaknesses and no clear way to attack something. The comp wants to go knight f5 in this position. This is what Topalov played. Knight f5 with a line like this, bishop here and then e3. And assesses this is about equal. Yeah, maybe this is true. I mean, I still definitely would prefer black here, because long term White's king position is simply not very attractive, and all this looks shaky in the long run. However, it's not clear that black can exploit this in any way and quickly exploit this. This was certainly still somewhat okay. This move, however, what Topalov played, directly leads into big problems. Black exchanged, and now bishop takes. Knight takes looks maybe a bit more natural, but also runs into problems. After bishop c6, black is already threatening a nice little tactic. Not difficult to see, but let's say white goes here, then black can take here, all a consequence of the g4 move. Something like this is of course excellent for black. Yeah, he took with the bishop, and now bishop f7. Of course we need to break this diagonal and prepare knight to d4. Knight f5 and bishop e5. Black has nicely centralized pieces. The bishop here is very strong, and the knight will hop to d4. Note that if in this position white would have the pawn on g3, I think there's absolutely not much going on. Yeah, this is simply, this pawn would love to go backwards. This is Topalov's move here, and it was Caruana afterwards stated that after queen d2 he felt that black will get an almost decisive advantage. Yeah, maybe this is the case. After queen d2, black is very well, in very good shape. Something like bishop c3 is what the comp recommends. Yeah, all relying, by the way, on this little thing. Yeah, after bishop c3, black probably will play g6, trying to get rid of the knight. And again, black is certainly in good shape and to be preferred, but it's not like he should win immediately. A line that shows the problem is this: where should the knight go now? Something like this. Check. He's very much on the offside, and something like this runs into a very awkward pin. And again, look at the king here. Yeah, this is what was played, and now knight d4 was played. Yeah, and this is a super strong knight. White now exchanged and played the rook. Yeah, there was knight b3 simply threatened. So this fork. And now black has a good coordination of pieces, and again it's the king position. With the pawn on g3, it would wouldn't be a big deal. Black would be better, but nothing too serious with that. White could probably defend there with enough exchanges. Took here.
Check.
Queen d4. Very strong centralization.
Check.
And now getting the queen near the king. Yeah, and here the weaknesses are too much. There's also this additional idea, c5 to c4. And Caruana goes to work right away with c4. The whole game was played almost perfectly by black, I think. It's very hard to find any flaw there. At least if you like I did. I didn't have so much time. If you check it with your own brain and assisted by the comp, you really don't see what black should do better here. Topalov played queen c2, rook e8, getting the rooks involved. Yeah, this is not helping very much, this capture, but there really was no big alternative. If white tries to play something like this, there is rook d7 coming. Just one possibility. Let's look at this. For example, takes, queen h3, and this is not something that white will be able to defend. Bishop c5. Here black has a very neat way to win. Bishop to d4. Very nice move. Rook takes.
Checkmate.
Very cute. And this
check
here leads to a disaster with those dual threats. It's the king position that ultimately will cost white the game. Yeah, and now it's piled up on the e file. b3, bishop b2, and here Topalov resigned. Yeah, no way to defend this position. If we look at this, the queen is attacked and it has nowhere to go. Probably must go to f3, otherwise queen h3 is coming at here.
Check.
Black will just take, and now he promotes the pawn. So very awkward looking very awkward looking game by white. Somehow he lost the threat here, starting with g4. I mean, I expressed my dislike for white's whole position before, but this is a personal preference. I simply don't like this type of position very much, because I don't really see what great plan I have here versus white. But g4 ultimately backfired. At least it led to a position where white could easily go astray, and it happened quickly here with this knight d5 move, which does not look too bad at first, but it seems that in fact white is in big trouble after that. Okay, this was a loss for Topalov against Caruana. Now let's check the world champion Vasilia Graf against Carlsen next. Let's see what happened. We have a Scotch game. Yeah, always hard to predict what Vasilia Graf is going to play, or MVL as he is very often called. It's a very long name, so understandable. Yeah, but the Scotch is an opening that he plays sometimes, and we have this line with bishop c5. Carlsen plays this normally, I believe. I mean, there's also knight f6, of course, but this is his usual choice. Knight b3. Yeah, this nowadays has become fashionable. In early years, knight takes c6 was the main move, queen f6, these kind of lines, but it seems that black has diffused this mostly. Takes, knight f6, and now the interesting move here. White has multiple ideas, not only one move playable. Here white played queen e2. This move in fact has been played also by Carlsen some years ago. I think it was 2000. I didn't look up the exact game reference. I think it was 2009 in Nanjing against Bacrot. I'm not sure about the name. The other thing's definitely right. He played Etienne Bacrot, and it was in Nanjing. I think 2009. 2010? I don't know. But this is an interesting move. White intends to play bishop e3 to exchange the b6 bishop and quickly castle long. Interesting to see what Carlsen plays now. He plays the move a5. a5 is a very rare move in this position. I only found one game where this was played between Volokitin and Ulyanov, probably the Ukrainian championships in 2013. An interesting move. The idea is to play quickly a4 or to provoke white to play a4 himself. In the game between Volokitin and Ulyanov, in fact, a4 was played, and then knight b4 was black's idea. The point of this is this insertion of those two moves gives black the b4 square for the knight, and the knight on b4 is a useful piece. It always threatens c2. It's near the king if white castles long, and it also controls the d5 square. That's very important. If we imagine that something like that is happening in the game, bishop g5 was played, h6, something like that. If you look at this structure, you see that knight d5 can be a good idea for white, trying to use this pin, and now the d5 square is securely protected by the b4 knight. That's very nice. In the game, Vasilia Graf MVL, he played, however, and instantly played e5, which is quite surprising, as a5 is really a backwater. It's not a very not a well-known move. As it turns out, afterwards, in some interviews, I think it was Nakamura who said that Kasparov showed him this move in their training sessions, and probably also showed Carlsen the move. that this is interesting for black. So it was in a way known, but never really played. Yeah, the first couple of moves here were played very quickly. Carlsen now castles, quickly castles, in terms of time spent. Interesting decision, but probably the only move. You couldn't really move the knight, and it's clear that after the capture, and white did capture, that the e-file is very important. Black has given up a piece though. a4 first, attacking this knight. Yeah, what should white do now? He played the best move, and quickly. Again, this was analyzed beforehand. By the way, instead of a4, which is logical and good, there also was rook e8. This was not totally silly. First inserting this and then play a4. Now the point is that after knight d2, black has this idea. Knight d4, queen d1 and d5. This is some compensation for black, definitely. It's not like it's totally silly, but black has given up a piece, and it is certainly not apparent that this is enough for a piece. It's however interesting to analyze. I continued a bit, but ultimately it should be probably better for white. Something like this is saving the day, I guess. However, a4 is simple and good. White now played knight d5. It's clear that if white moves the knight, the black initiative will become very, very strong. Rook e8, knight d4, only move, and a very scary move to play. d5, let's say takes here, and a3. And here black has a huge initiative. It's a very uncomfortable position for white to play. Let's say rook d1, queen f6. This is very, very, well, difficult to play. Would definitely prefer black here. And the computer is giving black an almost winning advantage already. So white probably must play this. Knight d5, rook e8, bishop e3. Not much choice really. And black regained his piece on b3. Yeah, now white does not have much of a choice. He definitely wants to get out a queen out of the e-file, and he does so with tempo. Queen g4, g6, bishop c4. If we look at the time spent, and this is pretty accurate, I was seeing this in the live broadcast, Vachier-Lagrave even had more time on the clock than at the beginning of the game. He dashed out his moves absolutely instantly to gain time with his increment, while Carlsen has spent a couple of minutes, but still it was clear that they both knew that this is a valid way to play. It wasn't a surprise. But how? However, here Carlsen sank into deep thought. He now spent more than 30 minutes on his next move, and ultimately played the very attractive looking move, knight b4. Turns out that this is probably just the best move, and very often this is the case. If Carlsen really digs down deep in a position, he very often will play the best one, the absolutely best move, and this is such a case. Very funny looking move, just putting the knight en prise, but there is a very clear logic behind that. The knight on d5 always covers this very, very annoying pawn on f6 that always can be the start of some mating attack. So we want to get rid of the knight, and with knight b4 this is tactically possible. At least we can distract the knight from d5. However, black had alternatives. It seems that the move bishop d4 was also possible. This leads to very crazy complications that are absolutely difficult to assess. Even with computer assistance, very difficult to assess. The main line of the computer here is queen h4, keeping this pawn for the moment, bishop b2, and now just castles. White is very ignorant about black's bishop on b2 and the pawn on b3, but white's attack is quite strong here. If black now is taking on a2 first, there is the funny move c3, and white has excellent chances here. cutting off this bishop from f6 and introducing this idea again, or renewing this idea. This is an excellent position for white. If black, however, takes the rook, which seems to be the best, plays b2, now we come to a position that it is very forced. As queen h6 is such a huge threat, black must play rook e5 to allow queen f8. And here it's quite amazing. This sequence, even with the queen trade, leads to a very unclear position. The computer is just saying, okay, well, this is equal. And this is still difficult for a human to really comprehend. However, if we look at this a bit more, we see that white is an exchange down, but he will get the b2 pawn. He has f6, and this is a pawn that is not so easily won in the near future. And he has very, very active pieces. The bishop on c8, for example, is not playing at all, while white's bishop and knight are very active. It's a bit difficult here in this analysis without even continuing further. But it's quite clear white has compensation, and it seems that it is enough compensation to keep this equal. Note that also this move can easily happen to support the pawn if it is attacked at some point. There were many fascinating possibilities. Carlsen at the end played knight b4, and it is a very strong move. Now Vachela Graf started to think, and long, almost 30 minutes, I guess. He ultimately decided to take on b4. White also could consider to castle, but I think this is probably the better choice. After castles, there are also many ideas for black. Some aggressive ones, some more solid ones. Black can, for example, play the very enterprising line. And then here, this looks a bit crazy, but it's interesting. The e3 pawn is very weak. It can be attacked, for example, by this. And the c2 pawn is quite an annoying unit that is not so easily taken off the board. Very unclear position, possible to play, but difficult in a practical game to decide upon. Black also can play after castles just d6, gaining this tempo on the queen. And then something like this, queen h4, takes. And here black can take on c2. Tough to play, I know. Tough to play for a human in a game. This looks very scary.
Check.
But it seems that this is just a draw.
Check.
And black can even play. Oops, sorry, not this. Probably this is possible, but you can just go back. And we have
check.
A perpetual coming. Very difficult situation. At the end, he took on b4, and I must say that this game is of amazing quality from a tactical point of view. If you analyze it with the help of an engine, you will see that both sides played almost perfectly. There's only a very little thing happening at the end of the game. Other than that, it is a fantastic game. d5, attacking the queen. This was, of course, the idea. Black gets the piece back immediately. Queen f4, to keep an eye on this pawn and still have this in mind. Now black recaptured the piece, of course. Here white definitely wants to get the king out of the middle and probably also, most importantly, connect rooks to get rook d1 in. Now Carlsen took on c2. A good decision. The main point is that this pawn is controlling d1. Rook d1 is not possible. White, however, has a strong reply. Knight d5. Again, this is the best move, absolutely. White should not play a passive move like capturing. Bishop f5 gives black a good game, yes. Even get this pawn back most of the time. Knight d5, just strong. Black cannot take this, as queen h6 is going to be the end of the game. And the knight, of course, is doing a good job here. It allows this move, it protects f6, and it's just very well placed on d5. Rook e6 played by Carlsen. It wasn't the only move, it was still, however, probably the best one. And now queen takes c4 was played, which again seems best. White can try or can think about knight e7 check, but this is a move that a strong player is very reluctant to play, because black of course will give up the exchange. And in this situation we can quickly see that black has 2 pawns for the exchange, and he even has chances to keep this pawn by means of bishop f5. And the one very important thing is white has completely given up the initiative in this position. He has exchanged his active knight, and here only black can be better, if anyone. Okay, queen c4 is strong. Black now captured. This is also the best move. And now the big point b5. Very, very strong and needed to be seen beforehand. This gains a super important tempo for black's development. Of course, white cannot take. There is c6. Yeah, knight e7 check, queen e7, and white loses a piece. Yeah, and otherwise it's just a fork. So white cannot take. He must play queen c5. And now bishop b7. This was super important. b5, bishop b7, all with tempo. It's all working perfectly.
Check.
Now MVL played this check. Again, the best move. There's not really any alternative. White can think of e4, maybe as a tactical idea, but this is unattractive. At least due to this, takes, and you give up your pawn here.
Check.
Okay, the check is the best move. King to h8. Oops. And queen takes c2. Want to get rid of this pawn. Rook a to a6 was played. Again, logical. We want to get the pawn here. The next move probably is the only slight imprecision in the whole game. Maybe it's a little one later, but we're talking about trying to play as well as an engine, and they both played fantastically here. Yeah, rook c1 was now played. Yeah, lots of logic behind that. It seems that rook d1 was a little bit more precise, but this was almost impossible to see beforehand. Rook d1 with a possible continuation like this, rook a to d6. And now white can afford a little improving move if he wants, like a3. Yeah, black is in a state where he cannot really do much else than trade everything off. Something like this, just to show you a sample variation. Here white is a pawn up. This needs to be appreciated, but this bishop is just very strong. And white should probably play something like h4, h5 to get some attack on the king. It's not easy to do anything active here like this idea, because black has this counterplay. But something like this h4 seems to be about equal. However, this is we are talking about very slight imprecisions here. Rook c1, rook f6. This is now forced, and what they did is they calculated this line, queen c7, and now it's black's move. And exactly here is the only point where Carlsen's play maybe can be improved upon. He played the move queen d2 and overlooked something in the process, a very little detail. Better is queen d3, which was very, very hard to spot beforehand. This queen d3 possibility is, by the way, the only reason why Sheila Graf's rook ac1 was a little bit imprecise, yeah, by computer standards, I mean. And we see the reason. It was totally inhuman to see this beforehand. We should make the comparison to queen d2 played in the game. After queen d2, it is in fact a forced draw by a perpetual check or repetition. Difficult to see beforehand. Queen b8 check, king g7, check here, again a check, and king to h5. This was clear. This line was pretty clear beforehand.
Check.
Now the rook check, g5. And in the game position here, white can force a draw, and forced a draw. This was played by rook takes g5. King takes, queen g7 check, rook g6,
check.
And we have this series of checks now. Black can play f5, but white has this way now to make the draw. There is no escaping this series of checks. The difference to queen d3 is, if we now go all the way back here, if queen d3 is played, then there is no draw, simply because that here, if we go that far, oh, I'm sorry, of course, to h5. We look at the same thing here. After this, oops, sorry, black has king h4. He must play this first to force g3 in a way. G3, king takes this, and rook g6. F4. And this is now ending badly. There is no more check. I mean, this is the least possible check. And now this is threatened. Queen d1 is threatened. There is a bit too much happening also on white's king. You cannot force the draw, amazingly enough. In the game continuation, we need to see the difference. In the game continuation, we have the same line. If king h4 is played here, yeah, f5 is no move. The queen on d3 is covering this square. A very little detail, but this is a difference. What would have happened after queen d3, however? Why is this better? Does not white have anything else? The problem is, of course, we have this threat here, queen e3, and white probably has to play this move. After this and rook d6, we have reached an endgame where black is a pawn down, but it's definitely clear that black is the one to play for win, as he has those ideas, rook d2, and the bishop is so much better than the knight. The knight on e7 has absolutely no square to go to, it's very much dominated. Here white needs to be very precise to hold a draw. I couldn't really find a way to equality here. White can try to be active with this, but bishop e4 is just strong. Rook d2 coming. I don't see a way really to clearly hold this. Note that a move like this is not really helping very much. This kind of move here is putting white really under huge pressure. Where do you go now? You cannot go here, for example, as the knight. Oops, sorry. After this is better. Intending rook e8. The knight is just trapped. It's a very unlucky piece on e7. I mean, here white definitely would have been in some trouble, but Carlsen stated later that he had not seen the consequences here of rook g5 correctly. He made some, as he said, he calculated something here that didn't work out. So at the end, it ended with this draw. Yeah, this was, from a tactical point of view, a fantastically played game by both players. Nice piece of preparation that at the end ended, as it is so often, in a draw after a sharp struggle. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the games. The second round will bring a modern classic in a way. Nakamura playing black against Carlsen. Maybe Nakamura can stop his streak of losses against the world champion. We will see. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.